What's up, bookworms? This is Megan coming at you with another Cantina conversation. Today's episode features a chat with Dee Williams. We're talking about her motorcycle club series, Morningstar Motorcycle Club series, and she's working on the NOLA Chapter second generation, if that makes sense. I read Nova, and she had Mayhem come out just recently, a couple weeks ago. I really enjoyed talking to Dee. I actually met her at a book event that she organizes with a couple fellow authors here in the area. And she was also at Smut Lovers that I attended last year with my friend. And so it was really cool just connecting with different types of books and authors and those events. And also just getting a little more personal in their romantic details and how that plays out. But I'll let you guys get to it. Here is Dee Williams.
So today we've got Dee Williams here. We're talking about the series that she's working on now, which is the Morningstar Motorcycle Club NOLA Chapter. She's already on the second generation. Desiree Dee Williams, thank you so much for meeting with me today. I had a chance to read Nova, so the one before the one that you're preparing that's going to come out now.
Yes.
So the one that you're preparing for the release, I read the one before that, and I liked it so far. I liked all the characters I met. I liked Nova, and oh my god, what was her name? Simone. Yes. I'm looking at your website right now. I'm like, her name's right here, like amongst the quotes that you have. I enjoyed meeting your characters, and I thought they were so fun and witty, and it was hilarious. And so I'm excited to talk a little bit more about it today.
Perfect. I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, I guess it's like considered dark romance, right? Like, or motorcycle romance, because that is a subgenre.
Yeah, it's motorcycle romance. Some of the storylines are a little bit darker than others. I feel like the biggest criticism that I got from Nova was that I didn't include as much as the motorcycle theme in it. It almost read and felt like a rom-com because of the nature of what he does. Like, he's not the Dark Brother. The Dark Brother is his twin that's coming out. So
there you go.
Yeah. So what you didn't
that's why I kind of liked him, because I kind of like tipping. So this for me personally, Nova was a good like kind of tiptoe, like putting my foot in the water of dark romance, because I've read only one other motorcycle romance series, and that was from what my friend published. And I was like, I'm going to support her either way. I just read it, even though I wouldn't normally pick it up. It's not my vibe.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that there was like the humor to it. There was like a little lightheartedness because Nova is, he does what he does. He knows his family does what they do, but he is very much like,
he is the lover, not the fighter.
He's matter of fact. He's a little goofy, like he's got a little bit like just outward. He's not so scary, even though he legitimately, it's like he doesn't look like he could hurt you, but he would hurt you.
Oh, he's totally capable. It's there.
Yeah.
It's there. It's just not called for. Like I said, he's the lover, not the fighter, because his father and his brother are the enemy fighters. And he was just like, that's not me. That's not me. He's the pretty boy.
He's like, I'd rather be a knight in shining armor for
pretty much
occasionally, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah, I appreciated his character, and I thought like him and Simone, they meshed well. It was funny to watch their relationship and their banter and their kind of like exchange and them kind of falling, just okay, like this is like our paths crossed again, and this is what we're gonna do, and are you cool? Yeah, I'm cool. Wait a second. What are we getting ourselves into? But it's okay. It's like, I loved it. I liked the vibe. I liked getting to know characters, and then also getting to know like, the darker side of what your universe is about through Nova.
Yeah.
I thought that was at least for me personally.
It's a good starting point. Yeah. Not so far into the series where you're going to be completely lost, but you get to meet all the others and get the vibe.
Yeah, for sure. So kind of like hopping off of that, can you go into like your background a little bit? Maybe anything that might have, because you got like I kind of mentioned before, a lot of titles and a lot more stuff that you're working on. So can you get into like your background, like maybe what led you to just kind of start your writing journey and bring about this line of, series to the world?
So I grew up in New York City. My mother was an English teacher. she always dreamed about writing her great romance novel. And I learned my love of reading from her. As I got older, I stumbled into it. I stumbled into beta reading. And I beta read for Maggie Cole and for Marie James. So Mafia, Motorcycle Club.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Totally different worlds, but both dark. And as I was reading their stories, I started like coming up with my own version. Like, okay, this what she did was cool, but if I had done it, I would have gone this way. Or it would have been so much more interesting if she had gone that way. And I slowly but surely started developing my own story. And as the years progressed, I would tell my girlfriends and my family about it, and they'd be like, oh my God, that would be so cool. You should really write that. Well, unfortunately, my mother passed away in her sleep in 2018,
Mm.
and she had probably about 4 unfinished novels.
Oh,
So,
wow.
in the middle of COVID, when I'm telling my cousin about a new idea that I had for this book, she just stopped me dead in my tracks and was like, you don't want to be your mom. And I was like, what? And she was like, literally, fucking write the book already. You do not
Yeah.
want to be your mother. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
well, shit. Okay. So my husband is an ER, well, he's retired now, was an ER traveling nurse during COVID. So he'd be gone 12, 13 weeks, chunks at a time.
Yeah.
And I'm retired myself. I'm like, well, I got nothing better to do. So I sat down one weekend when he was actually home, and he worked night shift. So he got home at 7 o'clock that morning. He was like, what are you doing up so early? Because I started writing at like 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm like writing. He went to sleep. And when he woke up at 3 o'clock, I was like, so I have 9 chapters done. And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah. So I called my cousin and I told her, and she was so excited. She was like, all right, we're going to figure out how we're going
Yeah.
to get you published. In a matter of a week, she had an author account set up for me on Amazon. She had my pre-order up. Like, when I tell you I was pushed into the deep end without even realizing what I was doing, the know-how, nothing. So looking back on it now, when people ask me what my biggest advice is just write the damn book. That really is the hardest
Mm.
part of the whole process. If you don't get the story
Yeah.
out of your head, no one's ever going to see it. Because getting it
Yeah.
out there is stupid simple. It really is. It's kind of like crazy how simple it is. But
You gotta have it
you
though.
got to
You gotta
have it
have it
though.
to
Yeah,
do.
you have to have something that you can actually upload to a website,
Yeah.
you know? But yeah, it
Yeah.
totally by accident. Like, it was just my love of
That
that genre.
I c- I could see that, but she gave like your cousin. Oh my God, I bet.
Oh, she was just
Like
so
that seems like this. So you're like the
that was the
support
nice
system,
version,
like
because she was just like, you know what? I'm sick and tired of hearing about it. Just write it.
relentless. Yeah. Excuse me. This is you have no excuse. You have all this set up
No,
for you
not at
now.
all.
Like
And she
what?
was my first pre-order, and she was the first person to
Yeah.
have it in. She had it before I had it,
Yeah.
and flaunted it all over Facebook.
Oh
Yeah,
wow. Oh my gosh, she's your number one
she
fan. I
really is.
love that. I love that someone who's like in your corner no matter what and giving you that push
Hmm.
because I agree with you. Like even not just like with writing or publishing a book, I think like almost starting anything that you're a little scared about,
Hmm.
like you're a little bit nervous to start, but that's like a good nervous.
Yeah,
That means it's like that's you mean it's big. It's not like a simple little thing. Otherwise you wouldn't be so nervous about
yeah.
it.
And I
And I
always
love
and
that
I
you
always
had
thought
someone
about
who
it
was straight
as
up like no, like,
yeah. And I always thought about it as, well, the entire world might actually hate it, but I know my mom is proud of me because I dedicated it to her.
Yeah.
So,
Mm,
like, I did it for us.
that's like yeah, you're tugging at the feels right now. That's so meaningful. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear about your mom, but yeah, maybe that's unfortunately that's just what in your support system recognize that
Hmm.
too, where it's just like, don't let that happen to you kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like
Like,
it's one thing
that's
it's
the
like
one thing that's
like they knew
so
that you had ideas and
teared
that
up.
you
Sorry.
had like oh no, it's okay. That's okay. This is a safe space, you know? Like you never know where the conversation's
Yeah.
gonna lead us. That's all good. Yeah. Oh, I know. And here you are, like what, 7 years later,
Um,
6 years later.
yeah, from her death. Yeah. The book came
Mm-hmm.
out in 2020 or 2019.
Mm-hmm.
2019.
Mm-hmm.
July 2019.
Yeah. And then
No,
so
21. What am I
she
thinking?
had
21. 21. This will be my fourth
We
year coming
all
up.
There you go. Yeah, and you've already got like God, I don't even know
Oh,
how many.
girl,
Like how do you produce so much work?
like I said, I am
Because you're
retired.
retired and your kids don't need you anymore.
Yeah, my baby just turned 16. She has been self-sufficient
Oh,
for years. My husband, much to his chagrin, I think some days he just wishes that, they didn't push me. It's my energy and my vibe. So like once I start something, I don't know how to do it halfway.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I just kept going,
yeah.
and the stories progressed and new characters were introduced, and then readers were like, well, are we getting stories for these people? And I'm like, no, wasn't planning on it, but like, okay, but we want it. So that's how all the spin-offs have happened, all the new
Yeah.
series, like just crazy little brainchilds that they were just like, no, no, we want more. And I'm like, okay, well, as long as I
Hey,
guys keep buying it, I guess I'll keep putting it
that's
out.
some good that's good complaints to have.
Sure.
That's good problems to have,
Mhm.
you know, if like people are complaining that they don't have enough.
They do need to remember that I need to sleep.
Yeah, right, right. That's a little bit how I felt reading Nova. I was like, I had fun reading it, so I was like, oh, I wish I had a little bit more, like, just a little bit more of their adventure. But I could totally see how, like, this was their story. This is how they fit into the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And this is how Nova, like, kind of finds his piece of the happiness pie, a piece of like, happily ever after, for lack of better
Yeah.
words. It's like, because it's not like, tropes aside, it's him, he never really expected it, but then he can't get her out of his head after this like one encounter. And even though like he entertains people for a living, was a nice way to put it, he's no stranger to like intimacy and meeting tons of people,
She was the one
and
that
connecting with them.
she was the one that put the one that got away perspective. Like he never understood that until it happened, and he was like, "Oh, that's what that
Yeah.
means."
He was, yeah, I got that, where he's
Mhm.
like, oh, other people experience this. I don't know what that's like. And then he's like, oh,
Oh,
shit.
it's legit.
But no,
I never thought it would happen to me. Moment because of what he
yeah,
does. So it's just like,
I know. And they were
okay,
both like, because Simone, she's like a little firecracker, she's like word vomit.
she's my
Like she,
she's my neuro spicy cat lady. That's
I
what
know,
I've
I
dubbed
wanted to
her.
get into that. I wanted to get into that because I appreciated, you slipped in a little bit of her personality where she's kind of like, that like mental health and the mental cognitive rep, things like that. So I kind of want to get into that. Like, you know, how did you interweave that into her storyline? Did you have to do research? Was there anything fascinating that you learned? Stuff like that.
Her personality is 100% my 16-year-old daughter.
Oh, there.
I know it's weird to say that, okay, I'm a romance author and my female main character is based on my daughter, but in my head,
Yeah.
that whole romance is how it's going to happen for my child. My child was diagnosed with Asperger's way back when. It's not even called that anymore. I think it's called AUD now. So she is
Mm.
high functioning on the spectrum, and she does not get sarcasm at all. She's got this very dry sense of humor and has extreme social anxiety. And if she could have 30 cats, she would. So when I decided that I was going to write Simone's character, I knew exactly where I wanted to go for it. And it's almost like a love letter to my daughter. Like, this is what I hope you find. Like, because when I sit down and I talk to her about, where she thinks she's going to be, 10 years from now, romance wise, she's just like, no. Like, she can't fathom it. I was like, well, I mean, I'm hoping it happens for you, baby. I really am. But she's
Mm.
just like,
She
no,
has no
none
interest.
at
And that's
all.
fine.
None at all.
That's fine for now. Yeah, you just worry about your child like being healthy and
Yeah.
happy and
So I was
complete,
like,
right? Like,
this would make a very interesting character. And that's where Simone's character was based on. Like, that's it.
because yeah, there was like things where she just was like straight to the point. She didn't like sugarcoat anything. She was very like straightforward, and it was
She's
really funny because Nova, he just went with it. He
she
just
is
like,
embarrassingly funny and doesn't realize it.
yeah, yeah.
Like
And like I
the
love it.
humor
Like
is just accidental. Like it's a
yeah,
byproduct of the way her brain works. Like
yeah,
to her, she's just like, what is wrong with people? But everybody
uh-huh.
else is like, oh, you should do stand up, and you're like, what?
Or yeah, they just kind of like they're like stunned a little bit. And I kind of like appreciate the fact where it's like this group of, it's like a motorcycle club. It's this group of like, kind of like rugged, can be ruthless if they have to be, like, their line of income, their money making industry is obviously, not for the faint of heart.
Mm-mm.
But she still finds a way to like stun them a little bit,
Yeah,
like not ruffle their feathers, but kind of like catch them off
yeah,
guard, and
shock
I
them into
love it.
silence. Like, did she? She
Yeah.
did. There's plenty of those moments.
I love it. And they just thought she was great. They were like, even if they were offended, they were like, "Oh,
And
okay."
it takes a
Like
lot
just
to offend a like think of like a Hell's Angels biker. Like, what could you possibly say to offend them? Simone somehow finds a way.
yeah,
Yeah.
I know. I know. I loved it because it's just like, okay, how is she gonna fit in? Because she's coming from this like, overbearing family where
That's the
appearances
beauty
are
of it. She
everything, and
never
then there was
fit in,
just
so she
like
didn't try.
trifling people
Mhm.
involved, and she was just in this situation, and she's just like, okay, like she had to kind of go in like survival mode a little bit, where she's like, okay, everything's gonna blow up, like what am I gonna go, where am I
Mhm.
gonna go from here? And then she tried so hard to like plan it out, but then it's like they won't just leave her
Mhm.
alone, and it's not that
Yeah.
simple. And so, luckily Nova was there to just be like, "Oh, okay, hey, excuse me, you can leave now." Like just escorting her mom out, like, "Okay, we'll talk to you later. Thanks. Bye."
Go
Like
with that nice police officer right there.
I know. It was just like I think that's also, I just love that about his character,
Mhm.
where he just took it in stride. He wasn't like, furious, like, or at least not overly, like he didn't go to rage. He
No.
didn't go to anger. He was angry, but he was like, "All right, that's enough now. Like, we'll see you later,"
Mhm.
which arguably pisses them off even more,
Yeah,
right?
the silent anger is way worse than the screamy growly anger because it feels more dangerous. Like, okay, he is completely calm right now, and you can see how upset he is. What would to happen if I pushed him over the edge? And that's
Yeah.
actually a question that's going to get answered in the next book. So, because if there's anything that you
Nice.
don't do, you do not mess with a twin brother.
Oh no.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my
so even though you
gosh.
got the contained happily ever after between those
Yeah.
couples, their story is not over yet. There's going to be plenty.
I can see that. I can see that, and I totally appreciate that, because it's like, yeah, you kind of gave us like the basis, the background,
Hmm.
and like established it,
Yep.
and now you're like, okay, like now where does their adventure begin?
Yep.
Like now what shit do they have to deal with now? Now how do they play a part in the bigger
Hmm.
picture, so to speak?
Yep.
Yeah, that's so cool. I love it. Did you have to do like any other research, or like were like your personal experiences kind of like, besides, your daughter influence your characters? Was there anything? Because you got some like, like business, like industry specific things going on just with the nature of their stuff. But I'm just like curious, is like, was there any, researching you had to do? Is your Google search history count, a little bit questionable,
Yeah, all
stuff
the
like that?
alphabet agencies have me on their radar. The biggest thing that I did research wise, but I did this way before I started this chapter of the club, was actual New Orleans. So
Mm.
I've been there several times. My husband's best friend, and he was the best man at our wedding, is a police officer in New Orleans. So
Okay.
like if I ever have to have like questions about like how the police work and everything like that, I can always he's a great resource. I can always pick up the phone. He's like,
Oh,
oh, this is for a
perfect.
book
Yeah.
again. Like, yeah, just answer the question. But when it comes to like the industry that he's in, I actually sat down with a very good friend of mine who is a professional dominatrix. Um, and she was actually the inspiration for another character in the very first
Mm.
generation. She's actually on the cover.
Oh,
So
nice. Haha.
I have a very good relationship with her, and she answered tons and tons and tons of questions because she's done work, I guess you could say, in Reno at the brothels. So I got a ton of information But yeah.
I know, God, to be a fly in the wall, because one of my childhood friends, she ended up doing that for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
She started moving away from that because she's like, I don't want to be doing this forever. And plus, like, and then plus there was like all the, because of the, like, the lawsuits that were
Mm-hmm.
going on. I think it was involved with, like, I don't know, either OnlyFans or something like
Yep.
that. It was something like some website. There was like this scandal or lawsuit, and so she, like, that kind of changed things for her. But I know it was just, yeah, it was kind of funny. She would show me videos of, like, her clients that would send her, like, oh, this is my idea for next time. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. I'm like, she would, like, show me, and I'm like people, I'm like, I don't want to, like, kink shame, but
Yeah.
I was just like I don't even know the half of it. Like, I
Listen.
just realized how uninformed
Mm-hmm.
I am about, like, what other people like. That's, like, maybe
I
taboo,
just like
like,
teasing
it's
her.
it's so
I was like,
fascinating.
20 years ago when you started doing this, I could understand it, but we're creeping up on like mid 40s now. Like, homegirl,
Yeah.
she was like, my
Yeah.
wrists are killing me. I was like, I bet.
She doesn't have the
Like,
calcium in her diet. I don't know.
when you talk about work induced injuries
Yeah.
in that business, it's
Yeah.
like, really? How did that happen? Tell me more.
I can't. See, me, I can't walk in stilettos, so that I would be done. Like, I like, cause like, we'll get a little R-rated here, but, like, one of the videos my friend was showing me is, like, somebody, getting their ball stepped on by a stiletto heel, and I was like, see, I can't even do that for anybody, because unless I'm, like, sitting down, because I can't even
And that is
walk
the
in
beauty of
that.
her industry, because she can order that. Like, lay down, put the shoe on.
Yeah,
You're going to work for it
yeah,
if that's what you want. Like, she's not exerting any
right.
energy if she doesn't have to.
Exactly. I know. Exactly. It's
I
like,
was like,
okay,
and
are
they
you
pay
okay with
you.
me, like, not standing? Because
Yeah.
then
And they pay you. You're living
do,
the
do
dream.
I have to move? No, I love that. I love how it's, like, kind of, people like us who, like, we know people
Mm-hmm.
who do it, where it's just like, no, there's a lot that we know, but then there's a lot, like, at least for me personally, I'm just, like, not super curious about
Mm-hmm.
it. But just, like, the stuff I know is mostly just her sharing, and then also just comments that she'll make. Like she'll be in a situation, something reminds her of something, and then it comes out of left field. I'm like, okay. I'm like, I'm like, where did that come from? Just like a situation might remind her of a client request, and
Yeah,
I'm like,
the
I
awkward
see.
thing is when you're out to dinner with her and she goes, we got to leave.
No.
And it's like,
Oh
no
no.
questions asked. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh
Like, there's somebody
no.
here that we can't be seen together right now. Like, we got to go.
Oh no. Oh my
Because,
god. That's like when
what is it?
it's
Six degrees of separation and it's a small
yeah.
world. Like,
Oh
oh,
my god.
those are the situations
That's
that
a
are really
drama.
awkward.
That's a juicy drama. That's a juicy drama that I live for sometimes. I'm like, no, let's get into it. So there's you got more ideas for your books, I'm sure.
The
If
amount of
you haven't
times,
already sprinkled them in
yep,
there.
the amount of times I tell my
Because
friends,
Nova had a couple, like, unpleasant encounters where, before people realized what the situation was, is he's like, oh God, here we go. He's like, crap.
that's where I got the idea for that, because it's going to
There you
happen.
go.
It doesn't
Yeah,
matter where
it
you
is. I know.
are.
It's like, it's a smaller world than you
Yep.
think. That's,
Yep. And
oh
of
my
course, I
God.
had to come back and bite him in the ass because she doesn't understand why he does it.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Cause yeah, cause he's like very much like, well, I'm an escort. It's like the physical stuff is kind of extra. Like, he's not only doing, where it's like, I don't know. I would feel like a lot of people do vice versa, where they're hired for the physical stuff, but, like, the appearances are kind of like a given.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, no, the intimate stuff isn't a given. It's like, not like, that's not what
No,
his priority is.
no,
It's like, I'm
that I
here to
do for
help you
free.
out.
That's the quote.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That he does for free.
I
Yeah,
know.
he
That's why I
sells the
think, like,
fantasies.
I loved his attitude about it,
Yeah.
because he was just like, no judgment. He's like, what do you need? Here's my here's my rate. Like,
Yep.
and he was just he wasn't like a robot about it.
No.
He wasn't insensitive about it.
Mm-mm.
He was very much like, nah, I gotta take care of this asshole for her because she's having trouble and blah blah blah. And he's, making sure that everyone he interacts with, like, feels comfortable. Like, I got the impression that if I needed his help, I would feel comfortable with him.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't necessarily be scared of him unless, like, unless I guess I saw something click where he needed to bring that side of him out. Or I don't know. But like what we were saying before, like I'd probably be more afraid of his family members than of him. Even though he's just like,
And
okay, here we are. Like
and you know what? And I think it's the other way around. I think because of the certain amount of brutality that he has been witness to that has occurred to the family and how the family has retaliated against that, I think he's more of a ticking time bomb. He's afraid of the damage that he could really inflict, which is why he shies away from that side. Because it's there.
mm,
Because if he needs to throw a
mm,
punch, he will. He trains with his brothers at
mm,
the club. Like he knows how to get down and dirty if he's got to. It's just he's never had the appeal. He was always
yeah.
like, why would I be doing this one? I could be doing that, and that's way more pleasurable.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like, people throw like the word toxic masculinity around, but there's a way to be like super masculine and protective and assertive without being such like an alpha about it,
Mm-hmm,
without being such like an asshole about
mm-hmm.
it. And
Which is a
I not
conversation that's
only
going to happen in the next book because that's how his brother is. His brother
perfect.
is the complete opposite, over the top, protective, will do anything and everything he has to keep his girl, to the point of detriment, unfortunately.
Mm,
And his
mm,
brother's like, dude, have you learned nothing from me? It's
yeah,
almost
yeah,
like
and that's the beauty of
the
like
twins' personalities were completely split. Like they both got just the right amount of what they needed from their parents, but on the opposite spectrums.
mhm.
So whereas
I could
Nova
see
is,
how that family needs someone like Nova for sure to like balance things out and to add that component to like
mm,
so it's not just like all a bunch of like
and their sister
ruthless people. Like
is a
add
scale,
add a little bit of like calmness in
and
there.
their
Yeah.
sister's the scale because she's the triplet,
Yeah.
the only girl that has been balancing these two idiots their entire lives, and she is tired.
Yeah.
She's tired.
I probably would be too. I could see that if like my two siblings were my triplets and they were both guys and it'd just be like, "Oh, you guys again? Like, are you serious?" Like, I love that. I bet she was like, that's a perfect way to say it. It's like, yeah, she's tired.
She's
Yeah,
tired.
I could totally understand. Hold on a second. My dog is like, I'm gonna ask my husband to come get my dog because I have the doors closed,
Uh-huh.
but I keep hearing her scratch
Scratching.
and whine, and that's the reason why I have the doors closed because I feel like if she needed something, she would be so relentless.
That's okay. My
Here, let me
husband
see.
keeps coming
Can
in, looking at me, shaking his head, and walking out.
oh. There she go talking about her books again. Like she's disturbing the peace outside the door. Yeah. I mean, he's working from home, so he. But that's one thing. It's like because I have two small boys, they're 4 and 7, but there's if I'm busy doing stuff like this or like other stuff
Hmm.
or like if I'm gone for whatever, it's like they wait until I'm available to ask for what they need. I'm like, there's another human adult in this house. I'm like, your father's right there. He's not busy. Like
But he's not
it's
mom.
okay. Is he hearing me?
He's not mom.
Yeah, exactly. Well, even I'm saying like even the dog is like that too. Like, what am I, the pack leader? Like, I like she'll wait for me, and I'm like, your dad is right there. He can open a door for
Hmm.
you. He can give you water. He can
Hmm.
like she. So yeah, no, I'm just aside from going out there and letting her in the room so that she stops. I don't feel like doing that. So okay, let me get back to my notes here. Hopefully the dog. I mean, I love her so much, but if she wants something, she will not listen. She's like 10 years old.
Oh,
She's like an old lady, so she's like, she's over
I
it.
wrote my
She's over
yeah.
it.
I wrote my cat into Nova's book because I have
Okay.
a 17-year-old
Oh yeah.
cat.
I kept calling them. She kept calling them pussies. That was like the running joke. At first, I was like, wait, okay. It took me a minute to like okay, so it's just a thing for her.
Mhm.
Okay. I was like cuz and even though you did give a warning at like the dedication or whatever, like just, just for all the women who love pussies or the word pussy or something like that, and I was like, okay, but that was like, oh no, good job giving us
Good,
a heads
good,
up cuz
good.
I would have felt like girl, you gotta pick a different type, like a different name for them.
It was her way of sticking to it to her parents. It was just one of those like, you never thought I was perfect enough, you know, like it was.
Or it's like trying to make them clutch their pearls more.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, because it's just like, because yeah, of course they would be like hearing that word, they'd be like,
In public, at a public event, like,
right?
know.
It's like, oh, but what about my pussies? Like, what are you?
Exactly. Exactly.
I didn't even know if it's like, okay, wait, what? Like, and everybody, the whole running joke, like everyone was like, wait a second, four? What? Like, where'd you find this one? And he's like, because at first she said kids, and then she was like, oh, my pussies. And he was just like, okay, hold on, don't lead
Now
with
see,
that. He was like,
and that whole scenario and joke is going to make so much more sense if you read the next book, because on top of
Okay.
the fact that they're polar opposites, Mayhem is a virgin.
Oh, what?
So for
There
him
you
to
go.
ask
We
that
could, like, be
question,
a little spoilery.
it wasn't just like confusion. It was like mass confusion. Like they can have more than one. Like it was like a legit question. Like, hold
Like,
on,
wait a
because I
second,
don't
like,
know what
I
I'm
don't even
doing
have
here.
confidence with one. Like, what?
Yep.
That's so funny. That's so funny. I always like that trope is interesting to me because there's like a couple different ways that you can go, that you can approach it,
Mm-hmm.
of like the virgin, because I don't know, everyone's everyone's story is different. I think the one thing is like, I don't know, I think I just it's just like, oh, sweet summer child, you know, like,
He
oh.
was saving himself for true love, because even though he's the fighter in the family, he's a romantic at heart.
Mm,
I mean, Nova didn't get all of
mm.
it. He didn't get all of it, but yeah, he was saving himself for love. He fell in love with one girl, and she disappeared, and he hasn't found anybody that has been it. So it's not just the
Mm.
women that saved themselves for marriage.
Oh yeah, yeah, I know. I mean, yeah. So I have a live-in example of that. I mean, if that's what my husband says, I don't know. When I met him, it was, and I don't want to air too much of his personal information that he has no control over what I'm talking about right now. But yeah, that I'll just say, yes, I know for sure. You
Your
know,
secret is safe with me.
revealing. Yeah, there you go. Although if you knew us when we started getting together, it was kind of like everybody knew. Everybody knew. So it was kind of funny to like, you know, after we first started dating, it's like, well, we know what happened now. We know it. Like we know.
Well, and to get, so you shared, so TMI from me now. I was a very young mother. So I got pregnant when I was 14, had my first child at
Mm,
15.
mm,
I had a ton of boyfriends after that didn't have any experience. So it's really not as
mm.
uncommon as you think. So,
Yeah.
but you never really
Yeah.
read about it. And I'm like,
No, because I think it depends. Because I feel like I didn't, you know, when I was in high school, I felt like, because I lost my virginity on the quintessential thing on prom night. So I was already 18, but I was one of my last people in my friends
yeah,
groups to have sex. And it was like, so for the longest time, I thought it was just normal, like kids in high school have sex. And like, for the most part, unfortunately, it does happen. It's not uncommon.
I,
And then so, but then when I got older, I was like, you know what? It's kind of like, even if I met older versions, it didn't seem like that big of a deal. It
mhm.
was kind of like, that's just how your journey went. Like it's just whatever personal preferences, either you weren't interested or you didn't feel ready or it just wasn't a priority for you. It's just, you know, there's a whole different slew of reasons of why people do or do not make that first leap. So it's you know, or like you were an ugly duckling and then you developed into the swan like later in life. It happens, you know. It's just like, so for me it's yeah, for the longest time I felt like teenagers, like that's when it was normal, but for it's much like a much wider range than that for sure.
I have a group of really close friends from high school. We still all are very close. And several years ago, this topic came up in conversation. And The quote is actually in the book, the next book. Drunken night of shenanigans. We were talking about this, and I actually looked at my girlfriends and I told them I highly recommend you The Flower Man. It's a very empowering feeling knowing that like it's our turn. Like it's our turn. We could take it. We could do this. But yeah.
Yeah. I think, yeah, and even just the more romance I'm reading, and like I'm finding more about what I like in terms of like the level of
Mm-hmm.
spiciness that I enjoy. And people think like, oh, smut is just porn. I'm like, even so, it can still be so, like, I don't get triggered by that word, even though I know a lot of people like disagree with it. It's fun. Even so, if that was like, it's literary porn. Like there's a difference between like smut and like erotica,
There's
right? It's like there's different variations of it. And so I'm here like, I if I'm reading a romance, I need a little bit of spiciness
yeah.
to it. Like I just need I people we love it for a reason. People love reading that. We eat that shit up. Aside from just straight up romance, cuz romance sells for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like those intimate scenes, it's just like connecting with somebody on a deeper level, but it's also like I can't I don't know, it's like I can't articulate why it's so enjoyable and why people seek that out, or it's like why the more chili peppers the better. It's there's sometimes where like I've read books that it's like, oh, this is a bit much. It's like there's no plot.
Yeah.
It's like, where's the
And
story
you
in
know what?
here?
And
It's like,
sometimes
unless
that's
that's what
okay
you're
if that's
looking
what your
for.
mood is.
Yeah,
You know?
if that's what you're looking
Yeah.
for, it's like, I just need something to like unwind, and that's a little raunchy and
This is
not
why
much
I
to
am
think
an
about.
avid believer in trigger warnings. They are a
Mm-hmm.
shopping list. They don't give
Mm-hmm.
anything away about the story.
Mm-hmm.
I could sit here and I could tell you all the triggers for mayhem, but unless you read it, you're not going to get the deaths and the little
Yeah.
details and everything else that happens within that story. You're just going to know that he's going to do this, 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 and this. You're just
Yeah.
checking it off.
Yeah. And you're not doing it for the shock
No.
factor. You're doing it because it's like, no, it's part of this lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna help. There's a reason you're putting it in where
You
you're
might
putting
not
it
be at
in.
the right mental state to read something like,
Yeah.
she likes to get choked.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. It's like maybe that's not for you, or you had a bad
yeah.
experience,
Yeah,
XYZ,
and
whatever. Yeah.
it doesn't even have to be like, a very traumatic event. Like it could just been like you
No.
slept wrong the night before and your neck hurts and you're just like, yeah, no, not today. Like
Please do not touch
yeah,
that.
it's
Like
there for a reason.
like don't pull my hair, like things like that. It's just don't, and it's just a preference. And like that's kind of like where I was going with before. It's like, I feel like I'm educating myself a little bit by like reading some of these romance, and I'm like, would I be into that? I don't know. That might be a red flag in real life versus like green flag in the book, where you're kind of like, oh, that's so hot, like a man with a filthy mouth. But then if they were saying that to you in person, there's the joke of where I would be running away if
Yeah, because I'm like totally
a
into all
man
these
said that
stalker
to me.
books right now with the
Yeah,
masks and the kidnappings and the stuff. Like you can try. I'm
yeah.
armed. I don't recommend it. But in a book, I love it. I'm like, okay, that's
Yeah. It's like, oh, he's obsessed with her. Like, yeah, exactly, exactly. That's what, but it's that's the joke about it,
mhm.
right? It's like, why are we so feral for these things that we would kind of be like have our guard up in real life? It's just that's because that's the beauty of it. It's like that's the whole argument, I think, of like versus like
Mhm.
pornography is like the porn. It's like recorded and it's real people, and it's not real. Like so much of it's acted out. But then like with books, it's fictional, and it's very much like it's on a deeper level. It depends on where you go with, like, it depends on where the side of that you're
Mhm.
reading. But a lot of it's like, even if it's stalker or like dark romance, a lot of it's like it's still you're in the level of it. You're like underneath all those
Mhm.
layers. Whereas like porn, I feel like it's just like surface level. It's, and then I feel like sometimes even if they try to get a little bit, with the cinema, like the visual, like the storytelling commitment to it, like the production value, I feel like sometimes it could get a little bit awkward, but unless that's what you're looking for.
And not only
But it's yeah, there's just too many,
not only that,
there's
but
too much of a
you're
difference of
dissecting
that.
the dialogue, you're dissecting the movements when you're actually watching. There's no freedom to envision it the way you think it should be happening because you're visually
Yeah.
seeing it happen. So there's a difference.
Yeah. And it's very much like yeah, like there's like we're here for a reason,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't we're in books, it happens like organically, so it's just like, yeah, and I'm here, and then like you could go fluffy with it where it's a silly like little romance. Like sports romance is such a huge thing right
Mm-hmm.
now, like it's so crazy with how much is out there. But I think like with the rise in indie publishing, like people like who are doing dark romances or the taboo romances, like you guys are finding your audience, you're finding your people and your community, not only amongst readers but like amongst fellow
Mm-hmm.
authors too. Like you're finding that camaraderie and your audience and the way to approach it, and however the resources that you have, whereas before it just wasn't
And
there.
I'm loving the fact that so many television executives are seeing the value in romance novels right now. Like, everybody keeps complaining that there's nothing new out. People are just redoing older things because there's no original ideas. I'm like, have you been in a library? Have you walked into a bookstore? There are plenty of stories out there.
Just take a vote, like put like give people
Pick up
in a
the New
focus
York Times
group or
bestseller list
amongst the
and just close your
community.
eyes and point.
Yeah, like okay, what? Because I've seen a lot of, yeah, absolutely. I've seen some of these books catch film deals or
Mm-hmm.
TV show deals, and I'm thinking like, obviously I'm excited for Fourth Wing, and there's like I feel like Onyx Storm is all I'm seeing right now, and I'm not necessarily mad about it, but I'm like, wait, I want to like make sure I'm giving other people attention
I'm
too.
like, okay, as an author, I'm really mad that Apple Books leaked those first three chapters. I'm even more
I saw
upset.
that, but it was like unauthorized or
Yes,
something, right? And it
yes.
was taken down.
It's back up. The
Oh,
damage
it's
has
back
already
up.
been done.
Oh.
So I guess the publisher was like, well, screw it. People already have screen caps and are sharing it to just put it back up.
Yeah.
But I'm like,
People are just so like thirsty, and I'm like, you guys, I know we've been waiting for so long, but we literally have like a week and a half. It's
but you know
okay.
what?
It's
On top of
okay.
that, the fact that that's happening, because I'm super excited for this book too. You're gonna kill it for yourself if you read it ahead of time,
I know. I
because
know.
you're just going to be waiting that much longer for the next book because she's going on hiatus.
I'm
That woman needs
I know, it's like
a
she's
break.
given us those Zayden POV chapters, and that's kind of been holding people over, like especially when everyone's like, "Oh my god, book boyfriend, shadow daddy."
Hmm.
But no, you're absolutely right, because then you're just like you're gonna be hanging on, and you're gonna read those three chapters, and that's all you
Yeah,
get.
because
And
this
then
last
whereas
one was it
versus
10
like you get
months
the
between
book, and then you
Iron
can
Flame and this
read,
one?
read, 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 read.
10
Yeah,
months, 11 months, or
yeah,
something like that. It wasn't a full year. It's going to be at least a year and a half
yeah.
before we get the fourth book.
Seriously, yeah, between the first and the second, it wasn't even a year. It was, I
Hmm.
want to say it was like 6 months
Hmm.
maybe. So, and then this one, it was like a year. And then, and like, we had to wait 6 months even for like a date, like a pub date.
Yeah.
And like, let alone a title, cover, all of that. So I
She is
know.
on vacay. Like, we're not getting that book
Yeah,
until
oh, she's milking it.
2026. So,
And then she released a book before that
hmm,
too, variation. But I guess that's what she needed. Like she said that she needed it. If
a
she
palate
That's how
cleanser.
she got through the Onyx Storm. Yeah, because
Yeah.
she started off as contemporary, so she's like, I that helped me survive. And I'm like, and I haven't read any of her contemporary, but I know that's where she started off with,
Hmm.
and that's where she found like her comfort zone, her comfort writing. And I'm like, that's so cool that she's like working her ass off, but still finding a way to like get make sure that she can deliver everything she needs to deliver. I totally appreciate that.
Yep.
Oh, but then the other film and TV adaptations I've been hearing lately was like Anna Huang's
I saw that.
Twisted series, and then obviously Colleen Hoover. I think Verity. I'm already spoiled for Verity. I've only read one book by Colleen Hoover, but I know that people are picking up her work. But here I'm thinking like, you guys are sleeping on so much. There's so much out there by other authors.
Not
Yeah.
True Blood, Black Dagger Brotherhood, Passion Flicks.
Oh, Passion Flicks. Oh, so I didn't know Passion Flicks was a thing until I went to like the Smut Lovers
Mhm.
conference last year. I'm sure. Were you there? Or did you hear
Yep.
about it, or
Yep.
you did? You were
Yep.
there, or you just heard
No, I
about
heard.
it?
No, I had heard about it previously,
Okay.
but I was at Smut Lovers. Yeah.
Oh, so was
Yeah.
I with my friend. That was her first signing event,
Oh.
and she was like, yeah, and she would because she's published one trilogy, and she was a friend I was talking about who I
Mhm.
read her books, even though it's like not my thing, but she was like, you know, would you come with it? Because I do this stuff too. And I'm like, no, it's a book thing, and it's a good, opportunity for me to like,
Yeah.
reach out to people, blah, blah, blah. But it was really funny because she's like, I don't know what I would have done if you weren't here with me, like to another person at my booth. Because otherwise it was just her. And then one of her friends was actually doing the videography for the event too. So it was really cool to like kind of help her with her equipment and get the like little details and like tag along and stuff. But it was funny because I had a whole list of things, like I kept track of things that I learned
Mhm.
while I was at Smut Lovers. Like it was so interesting, and but it was really funny because I had a couple friends who were like, "So how was your dirty book conference?" And I'm like, "I learned a lot.
Yeah.
I learned a lot. I learned a lot, and so I'm going. I've already registered again for next year. I got like an emotional support human pass.
Okay.
Yeah, because otherwise I was like, because it's expensive and it's like a lot to ask for like a friend to tag along, and she understands that. But yeah, I just remember like, no, I had a good time, but I was like joking with my husband, like taking pictures and sending them to him. And I was like, this is you when I get home. He's like, no, like,
So I was so incredibly sick. Like
oh
me and my husband
no.
were supposed to be presenters on day 2.
Oh,
We missed our panel. We both have food poisoning.
oh no, that's the
So I missed
worst.
all the panels.
Which panel were you guys doing? Were you
We
going to
were
do?
doing before and after care.
Okay, okay.
So yeah, so we missed.
So were you guys, were you there for like part of, at least
I
did you
was
get to
there for
enjoy
the
some of your
actual
time?
signing.
Okay.
So I did get to, and it was so funny because when I walked in, the organizer was just like, "Oh my God, you're alive! I hadn't heard from you since you canceled the panel. Are you okay?" And apparently, I wasn't the only one that got sick. I'm pretty
Oh wow.
sure this neurovirus that's going around right now is what we all had in September. Because
Yeah, I no, I'm right there with you. I had like something, and like it's just worse when it's like a stomach flu, because then it's like congestion I can deal with. It's like when it's going through my whole body. God, I can't imagine. I'm so sorry that I
it,
can't imagine,
it,
especially at the worst timing.
it,
Worst timing.
but I will be at Smut Lovers again this year.
Me too. I'll have to find you.
I don't.
No,
She's
my friend
going
is
for.
Emmy Thornwood, but she does the motorcycle. Like I feel like
I feel like I've seen her name.
she did release. Yeah, because I think where were we at? We were at Cuffed in Chicago or something, and that's how we
Yeah.
met. That's yeah. She asked me to tag along with
Okay.
her, like I was her buddy. Yeah, so that's how like she's the person who like, because she was going because she wanted to feel it out, and I'm like all here. I'm like, I'll support you no matter
Tell
what, no
me,
matter
since
what you
I'm the
do.
organizer, tell me how'd it go? How'd you? How'd
Oh,
you
it went like with the Cuffed.
hmm?
Yeah, I liked it. It was kind of like, it was definitely, I mean, obviously like the cost was like, awesome,
Hmm.
and I loved how much we got
Good.
for what we spent. Like, cuz and then I like the support too, and I kind of, I tend to spend too much money whenever I go to those
Yeah.
things, so it was just like after a certain point I was like, okay, I can only buy one thing from you because I already went through a lap. I did a lap. So no, I enjoyed it, and I just, yeah, I just enjoy meeting authors and getting the opportunity to talk with them, and then getting like the bookish accessories and
Mhm.
stuff like that. And I think probably my favorite part of it was just like the vibe. Like everybody was so like welcoming and excited and
Good.
positive, and you could tell everyone was there like good mood.
Good.
And you guys, whoever, I don't know how the vendor application process was, but you had a good mix in terms of like authors, like people of
Mhm.
color. I think the LGBTQ community
Mhm.
was in there, and then also people besides the Smut Lovers booth. I liked all, like, you had people who were selling
Mhm.
merch, bookish stuff, like naughty
Yep.
stuff, and I think I bought a pair of earrings that were like vaginas because
Nice.
it looked classy enough, and I was like, no, actually, this is sleek, but I can't. I have to choose certain events to wear it at.
Yeah.
Otherwise, people might be like, "It's subtle. It's just subtle enough." But it's like, I know that what they are.
Oh my God, that's great.
So I don't know. I think just as a book lover, I'll enjoy myself mostly at that time anyway. But I think I just the diversity of it, and like the variation, like that, how just like just all the options that you
Good.
had. Like it was a little bit, because Cuffed in Chicago, you think of like, oh, the name kind of sets the tone, but it wasn't, it's nothing to like
Mm-mm.
be nervous
No, and
about,
we
really.
rebranded
It's
because the second year is happening April 25th. We It's
Okay.
Lucky and Lombard this year.
Lucky and
Yeah,
okay.
because
Or that's
we have so
right
many
up
people
right
that
right
were
around the corner.
confused. They're like, but you're not in Chicago. Or we got the, but you're in Chicago. And I'm like, all right, come on, stop watching the news, people. Stop watching the news.
It's not even it's just like it's like well you never know people are gonna come. It's kind of like if you want your eyes on a bigger stage,
Hmm.
Chicago is gonna catch more eyes
Yeah.
than Lombard.
So,
You know,
yeah.
nobody says like, oh, so and so, like if they're doing Wisconsin, they're gonna say like Madison or Milwaukee. They're
Hmm.
not gonna say like
Well, I said Chicago because that's the
Kenosha.
airport you're traveling to if you're coming by plane. I'm
Yeah.
like, but yeah,
Or it's Chicago suburbs. No, I'm
exactly.
right. I'm
So
right
I
there
just
with you.
changed it to Lucky and Lombard Chicago Land event.
Okay.
So, but yeah,
And then is that coming? Is that going on this
April
year?
25th.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'll put. Do you have links available?
Yes, everything is up on my page in my link tree.
Linktree.
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah, because I'll make sure to include links, and I'll let my friend know, because then we can stop by because it's like super. Like we both live like around that
Nice.
area, so it's super. Yeah, even like the where it was held last year, it was like super
We're
close to
across the
us. Well,
street.
it was still in Lombard. Is it
Yeah.
the same
No,
place?
we're across the street at the
Embassy Suites.
Westin.
Okay. Okay.
Bigger,
Oh
bigger venue. We doubled our size. We
yeah.
have
Okay.
75 authors and 5 vendors coming.
Oh, nice. So how does that go? Like when you're planning events like that, like is it just kind of like year after year it gets more popular or like because I could see that happening where people are like kind of like hesitant, but then they kind of see how it goes and they're like, "Oh no, I'm ready for
Word
this
of
type of
mouth,
thing."
definitely, definitely. Me and my partners were just pretty much the only big event when we started planning this was Wild and Windy in Chicago. And we were like,
Mm.
it's damn near impossible to get a table there as an author, and just as impossible to get tickets.
It's like you got a wait list a year in advance or something.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
was like, and the city is big enough for both events. I was like, we need to work it where we're bringing fresh blood. I mean,
Yeah.
newer authors to the area because you're never going to find new books to read if you're constantly seeing the same authors. And I mean, yeah, you get new books periodically depending on what their writing style is, but after a while, I don't want to say you're tired of it, but you need that palate cleanser. You need
It
something
is.
different.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
basically, we put out the application, and it was no rhyme or reason to it. It was first come, first serve until we were full. And we
Mm.
had some people who,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
we had people that signed up, and then conflicts happened, and they had to drop out.
Yeah.
And then we started pulling from the
Yeah.
waiting list, and that's pretty much how we're doing it this year.
That's really cool. I'm happy for you that it's turning out to be
Yeah.
successful and that you're getting a lot of interest for it like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are doing a little something a little different. So the GA tickets are actually free this year. So we're not charging for general admission tickets, and we have 3 VIP options. You get something special with each, depending on what tier you get. So, and our charity this year is Rise Chicago. So it's battered women.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
perfect. That's great. I think that's a good option to have, like to make it free, and then if you want the extras, you have options
Well, what
too.
we did last
Because
year
I
was
feel
we
like
did
you
college students
spend
free. So if you showed your college ID,
yeah
you got in free.
yeah.
And
I feel like there's potential to sell more that way.
you know what?
Like
We did it as a tester. So far, you would think with free tickets, the GAs would be sold out.
mm,
Not the case.
mm.
Not the case. So,
Yeah, you got to figure out how to like get the word out
mhm,
to attendees, not just
yeah.
vendors, right? It's like you got the vendors, you guys are all set.
Well, and I feel
So
like
you gotta, yeah,
most of the tickets, unless you're like an established, well-known, like bigger event with like the big ticket authors that are coming, I don't think these tickets will start like moving progressively until closer to the event, just because of the timing. Like late April is the beginning of wedding season. It's
yeah,
graduations, proms, and things like that.
yeah,
But then summers are hard too because people are on vacation.
100%.
There's
Yeah,
no
absolutely. And then you don't want to do a weekday because then nobody's gonna come on a weekday for
exactly.
like 3 hours. It's yeah. I know. Yeah, it is. It's a
That's
like
hard
it's definitely a balancing act. It's a learning experience. You definitely have to
for sure.
it's a learning curve.
For sure.
Especially, I mean, kudos to you for like you and your group for like taking on that project because it's a lot.
Hmm.
It's a lot, and you're just trying to like find a way to connect, readers and authors and build a community and help authors get exposure and
Hmm.
have a chance for like that one-on-one experience and in-person meeting and signing and putting yourself out there. And so,
And we're
which is so
nonprofit, so we're not
important.
making anything on this. We donate every penny
Yeah.
that's left over. So
Yeah. Yeah, even though I don't think anybody would shame you if you like were found a way to at least reimburse
yeah,
yourself, and then like whatever profit, yeah, you would
my
go.
profit is
I
not having to pay for my own table.
There you go.
That's how we
Yes,
reimburse ourselves.
yes,
We get a free table. So
perfect,
whatever we
absolutely,
sell
and
there,
that
we
can be
keep.
like
You know. Yeah.
that's so important. That's an investment,
Hmm.
all of it in itself. So some of those booths are not cheap
No,
at all.
no. I'm
It's so
actually going
crazy.
to Rare Melbourne at the end of this year. And I mean, considering the cost for the table, because it's a 3-day event, is not bad.
Mm.
It's not. But man, getting there is going to be expensive.
Yeah, like Australia.
Yeah.
That's what you're
Yes.
saying? Australia?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
I mean good for you, but I wouldn't go to Australia just because everything there is trying to kill you. So I
So
don't
my PA is Australian.
Okay, so you have a little bit of an in or little
She would
insider
skin
knowledge.
me
And
alive if I hadn't taken this opportunity.
was she the one who told you about it and was like, "Okay, hey, did you sign up? Did you sign up?"
Um, I think she actually did the signing up herself.
Oh.
To be honest, yeah,
It's like what? It's like 4 or 5 years later, and you're still like you still got somebody else like giving you that push
yeah.
to like. I can relate though. I can relate. It's just kind of yeah. It's like I said earlier. It's just kind of like oh should I do it? I don't know. And it's like
She's my
somebody
brain.
else is just like no. You're a force to be reckoned
Mhm.
with. You're a queen. You're a warrior. Go do
Yeah,
this. Like
she's the outside brain. Like she does the email answering. She runs the social media. She like there's only so much space in my head.
yeah, yeah.
So
You gotta
yeah.
save your space for
Hmm.
making the books,
Yep.
making the stories. So I want to respect our time
Okay.
here and just I'll ask a few more questions. We like there's some things I wanted to ask, but there's like I know we could talk forever. So I'm curious, what were the like I guess if you want to talk about your book coming up, Mayhem, it's coming up on January 20th,
Correct.
right? Yeah. So if there is a way well, okay. Well, how about I'm gonna apply this question. How about we apply it to like this
Okay.
series so far? So it's like, what were your most challenging parts to write? What are the most enjoyable parts to write?
The most enjoyable parts was the humor in Nova. Like I
Mm,
really did enjoy writing Simone's character and writing all the little intricacies of her personality. The hardest part was weaving the story in the very first book in Seer, weaving his story together because it was a continuation from the first generation. So it was like the plug in from the first 12 books. And I wanted to give proper representation to non binary characters and polyamorous. And even though I'm surrounded with plenty of people who live those lifestyles and identify as that, I wanted to do it justice coming from someone who doesn't.
mm,
So
mm-hmm.
there was a certain amount of grief that I had to learn how to not display, that's not the right word, acknowledge, because they lost a partner and that partner was a non-binary. So it was tricky with my writing style, having to switch up my language so that I got the pronouns and everything correctly in the correct time sense.
Mm,
So that was very challenging. The editing process on that book was hell because you slip up. You slip up when you're not used to doing that. So
Have ill intent.
no,
Like
not
you're
at all.
not.
Not at all.
Yeah, yeah. You're not trying to be ignorant. You're just like trying. You're just like it's just what you didn't
Yeah,
catch.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah. I could no. I could appreciate that, and I'm sure that was definitely like a learning experience for you because like now you know better.
Because in
You
real
know.
life, when you're talking to a non-binary person and you're saying they them, it's one thing. But when you're speaking to one that's deceased in a book, the tenses change. Like my editor was like, "I need you to stop time jumping," and I'm like, "I'm sorry." Like it's hard. But yeah,
Yeah.
that was a major learning curve.
Yeah, yeah, I bet. I know there's a one thing to be said about being patient and then
Mm-hmm.
about doing time jumps because my friend who I'm talking about she hates doing flashbacks but she found it so
Yeah.
necessary and then it got to a point where she was like, "You know what? The first in this spin-off series is going to like act as a prequel and then the second one is going to be like matching up with the timeline of where she spun off with." I'm like, because she's like, after all was said and done, she discovered like I have enough for a whole fucking book. Like I
Yeah.
don't want.
Yeah.
And it makes sense because it's like, yeah, you where do you go with it when you want to build the character up and you want to get your readers acquainted and caught up to speed if especially if this is their first introduction to the
Mm-hmm.
story, and then it's like how do you treat that and how do you do that makes the most
Yeah.
sense, you know, and you don't you want to have a good time while you're doing it too because if you're not having a good time the readers are going to sense that as well. So yeah, I totally respect and appreciate like any of those struggles, you know, and especially just with like okay, it takes the time that it takes, and like some of the daunting parts still are almost just as
Yeah.
important as the meat
It
and
was it was
potatoes,
a
you know.
complex dynamic, especially when you have one partner in the poly family who isn't done grieving the death, and the other two
Mm,
partners want to try and bring someone new into the family.
mm-hmm,
And they're
mm-hmm.
introducing someone who's not used to that lifestyle. So there were all levels of complexity. But that's real
It's like
life.
four different love
Yeah.
stories like trying to mesh into one time, like one storyline. It's like yeah,
Yep.
yeah. That's what it reminds me of. I think my first or my second Why Choose novel was Emily Rath's her Pucking Around,
Okay.
and it like people a lot of readers were kind of complaining like how big how long the book was, but she's like people,
They all
it's four
deserve their
different love
story. Yeah.
stories. Yeah. She's got let's not just like yeah, it's a four person like
Hmm.
relationship, but there's these different dynamics and it has to happen organically instead of just like rushing through it like oh this is convenient because I tend to share with my brothers whatever like it's like well no it's like well you're meeting these people and you feel connections with all of these and then some of them feel connections with each other and so yeah it's like you have to do the story
Hmm.
justice and you have to like flesh it out for it to make like to really hit not only be believable but then also like really hit that authenticity
Hmm.
and hit that like that engage the reader and have them feel that like love the characters even though like you don't understand how what they're doing like
Yeah.
how like you know how their relationship is but you still like love the characters and love how far they've come or whatever and no I appreciate that for sure I appreciate the struggle I appreciate the vulnerability I appreciate you know you letting yourself grow by doing
Hmm.
things that you're uncomfortable with and also just like you know your honesty and being like yeah I struggle with this was hard
Yeah.
it's like as you know it's yeah
If
it
it was
should be
easy,
it's
everybody would do
real
it.
you know, or it wouldn't be as like impactful.
Correct.
I feel
Yeah.
like, you know, yeah. Okay, so just a couple more
Okay.
questions. What advice do you have for Nova? What advice do you have for Simone?
Whew. For Simone, don't be afraid of change because she needs to be able to control everything around her. And letting go is not something that she's accustomed to. But she's also not aware of how to depend on someone to pick up the vulnerability when she does let go, which was like a major point for Nova. Like, it's okay to lean on me. For Nova, don't be afraid to love. Because as much as that was his business, he was giving to everybody else and never learned how to take or accept, I guess would be a better way to say it.
I love
Yeah.
that. it's hard to it's easy to give.
Mm-hmm.
At least for someone like him, I could see that that's so profound. Like it's hard to accept. Like allow yourself
Mm-hmm.
to accept that same treatment.
Like
I love that.
he's paid to give. So when it was his
Yeah.
turn, he almost felt guilty, like unworthy of it, and it was just like,
Mm. Yeah.
no,
Yeah. Like boy, you just want to like
beat yourself
backhand him. Like
and
stop it.
her. Come on now.
Stop it. Stop it. Just stop it.
Mhm.
Don't wear like you silly bitch.
Pretty much.
Okay, D. Williams, we know that you've got Mayhem coming out on January 20th. Is there anything else that you're working on that you can talk about?
So February 10th, I have the first in a new cowboy romance series that I'm working on. You guys met Cowboy. He's the vice president of the club. It's his
Okay, yeah.
family. Because I was one of
Okay.
those, oh, okay, you wrote this character. He was introduced in the Reno chapters. His partner was originally in the Reno chapter, Glitch. And during her story, we met his family. And immediately the emails started pouring in. So, like, are we getting cowboys? Are we getting cowboys? Are we getting cowboys? And I'm like, wait, what? No. No, I was just giving you background on him. They were like, no,
Yeah.
we need the cowboys. Wink, wink, push, push. And I'm like, all right, fine.
That's so funny.
So
Your readers are like, wait, you've got it though. You already got the background. Come
pretty
on.
much they were like, so you invented all these characters and you did all this. Like, no, we need this story. I'm like, all right, fine. So actually that week is going to be kind of fun because I have 2 anthologies that are releasing plus that book. So we have
Nice.
Vengeance for Valentine's, and all proceeds are
Okay.
being donated to the American Heart Association. Comes
Oh,
out on the
wonderful.
11th of February. So we've got
Yeah.
Red's Revenge, which is the oldest brother in the Justice Ranch crew. Cowboy's older brother comes out the 10th. And then my story in the anthology that comes out the very next day is a prequel to the second book. So that's Colt's story. So the basis for that anthology was we had to use the words "who hurt you" or "who did this to you." So
Okay.
you get
Oh
a
my
little bit,
God. Sending women feral
yes.
everywhere.
So
Like...
you're getting a little taste of the second book, but then unfortunately you have to wait until the end of March to get that one. But or no, I'm sorry,
Oh
May,
God, 2
May,
months
May.
after. Okay, 4 months.
Yeah,
Whatever.
May for that one. But yeah, and then that Friday I also host Aces Wild Atlantic City. So the anthology for that convention comes out that Friday. So,
Oh, okay.
and
Perfect.
that one's an Alien Omegaverse. My first.
Oh.
I had a lot of fun writing that.
I imagine because some of that stuff, like it's like bordering like on unhinged. It's like you're really out there. You're really out there. But like I haven't read any and I'm like really like I've read paranormal but not romance. And so but I know I see like the paranormal romance or like whatever it is, like the monster romance. I'm like, I don't know, like they're
That was a dream.
I'm like there are a couple there's just a couple of other books that are higher on the reading list. Then I would start adding them on. But I was talking with my same friend. She's like, no, they're really fun. They are really fun.
Well,
and I will trust her.
This one was
I will trust her. So
because it's a casino themed event.
Okay.
It had to be, the story had to take place, or at least an aspect of it had to involve a casino. And since I'm the organizer and I'm putting the anthology together, I'm looking where everybody's going. I was like, I need to throw something in here. I need to throw a curveball in here. And I've always wanted to do an alien book because I am a huge sci-fi nerd. I'm like, all right, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to think about this. If I had to pick an alien race that was doing, like, say, like a James Bond-ish Casino Royale type feel, what alien race would I go with? And the very first thing that popped into my Gen X brain was the Thundercats.
Yeah.
So picture James Bond as Lionel, and you got my main character Apollo in that book.
Oh my God. I love it. But you know what? There's an audience for it.
Yeah.
There's going to be people who are going to go for the
Yep.
nostalgia. They're going to be like, they're going to pick up on that crossover like combination right
Mm-hmm.
away. And they're going to be there for
Yep.
it.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Yep.
I love that. And I love that that's your first, like, you're like, no, I'm trying it
Oh,
out. We're going to do this
totally
because
went.
I
Go home.
can't not do
Go
it.
big or go home. Go big or go home. And
Yeah.
my story in that anthology is called "Not Winning."
Not
Because you had to throw in the turn of phrase in there. But yeah, that's what's coming out in February. So I've got technically 3 books in 1 week in February coming out. So
that's gonna be a big week for you.
yeah,
I'm excited for you.
yeah.
But that's gonna be a lot. You got so much on your plate. You are a force to be reckoned with. You are like unstoppable.
I am eventually going to slow
it's
down
because
to like
it's because
a book a year.
well, I respect that because like you're like, well, okay, my kids are grown and I'm retired. Like you're not, you don't want to just like lounge around or like being lazy is okay, but I have a feeling you're like you schedule your lazy times where you're like, no, I'm okay with being lazy right now. But now I'm like, okay, now I'm going crazy.
Yeah.
Like now I need to do something.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of like I feel you because that's like kind of why I do this stuff. Like I have a 9 to 5, but like I don't know. I feel like if I didn't have this stuff going on, like, yeah, I would still be reading anyway, but otherwise I would just be like doom scrolling and like just endlessly not, you know, not contributing. I would just be consuming. And it's not like that's super important to me, but I'm like, I'm glad that like I get to do stuff like this where I get to talk to cool people like you, read all different things that I might not have picked up if I had not known about it. And then just like helping other readers like connect with people like authors and people like you. Like that's why this stuff that I do, it's like I do both like traditional publishers and then indie authors too, and it's because I work with both like a PR agency and people like you, or like where I meet with them at events, or they'll reach out to me and ask like, oh hey, I'd love if you get any chance I can get on the show. And I'm like, yeah, like why mostly at this point it's just like I see if it fits like my vibe. And like because some books I read where I'm like like I'm kind of underwhelmed.
Yeah.
It's stuff like it depends. Like with nonfiction, you never know what you're gonna get. With women's fiction, sometimes it could be boring, and it's just like it just depends. It's like it's not my jam. So I'm trying to like I try to make sure, depending like, okay, what am I trying to do? What are my readers or listeners trying to be interested in? But that's why I don't just discriminate against people who've done indie, like the Amazon self-publishing, like because I've read books that I really enjoyed, indie books that I've really enjoyed, and I've talked to indie authors that I've really had a great time with. But there's also traditional publishers that I've had, like traditionally published books where I was a little underwhelmed. But even though, like, even when I talk to the author, like, it's still a good conversation. So that's why I'm like, I'm not always necessarily. That's the thing though. Like, so I'll agree to it before I read the book, and then when I read the book, and I'm like, oh shit, like this wasn't a good book, and then like I gotta talk to
I am
him
totally
still.
going to put you on the spot because I'm totally curious. I don't know if this has happened or not, but what happens if you read a book and it's like totally, problematic? Because it seems to be a more like growing thing where people are just writing
Like
things that
trigger warnings or
common
offensive,
sense
or
should
like
tell you not.
politically incorrect,
Yeah.
or like.
So then what do you do?
So what I found is that the book community, a lot of authors are very sensitive to that. A lot of authors, that at least that I've spoken to, the books that I've read so far, they have consciously are not, they don't have that issue either on purpose or just their natural writing.
Okay.
Or if they did, it's kind of the only couple of times, I don't know, I can't think of any authors that I've talked to where their book was super problematic.
Okay.
I think I've only talked to authors whose books that I just didn't care for, or they weren't that good. Yeah. But I've still talked to them and it still was a fine conversation. The only thing that comes to mind is like, a book that I read recently. I'm not going to do the title.
No.
Because, yeah. So it wasn't written very well, and the characters were kind of insufferable, but it was like also taking place like 30, 40, like in the 80s. So I wanted to respect that context. So I think that's why I didn't see it as super problematic, because I feel like oh, this was just kind of how it was, or that wasn't so taboo, or like, I don't know, just kind of the language they were using, or the kind of like, typical gender roles or the presumptions that people have. Like, I think I want to remember, but it depends. The only thing that comes to mind is that particular instance, but I didn't find it super problematic because I was like, the only thing I found problematic was that the author I didn't get the sense that they've also viewed it as problematic. Because sometimes the author can introduce topics and themes that are problematic or potentially toxic and offensive, but you could tell through their writing and through the situations that they understand that, and they're acknowledging that. Like, this is a problem. This is not okay. This is adversity, opposition that the characters are facing, and this is not right. Versus like some other things where this book in question, I didn't get that impression from the author where they felt like, this is tired, this is wrong, this is like so stupid, like what, it was just kind of matter of fact. And I don't know if it's that the outlook, or if it's just their writing style, or if they're just not like, they need to work on their craft, to like get that point across. But that's the only thing that comes to mind is where I'm reading it, and then the impression that I'm getting from the author's like opinion. To them, it doesn't seem like it's a big deal, when it's like,
Got it.
if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
kind of,
I was always curious. I've done a couple of these interviews, and I'm like, whatever happens, like in those situations, do they just like cancel the interview? Because then I put myself in your guys' shoes, and I'm like, you know what? No, I wouldn't cancel that interview. I would totally do the interview and address that shit head on.
I see. I'm like so non-confrontational that I kind of just tiptoe around things, and I'm like, I'm gonna make this a good interview. I'm not even gonna address that. I'm gonna find a way to like not even touch on it.
I'm a
There's like,
devil's advocate, so I wouldn't like be like totally confrontational. I would point out where I would think,
yeah,
this might be an issue, and how are you going to handle it
I
if it
wish I
is?
could be like you. I wish I could be
Yeah.
like you. My cousin is the same way. When he used to like, when we used to do this stuff together, he was the kind of person who didn't back down.
Yeah.
And he was like, he's like, oh God, let me tell you about this. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, it's just certain times where I'm like, oh, okay, like, dude, did you have to? But it's like, no, there are people who like, the world needs people like you to kind of like push the envelope a little. Because here I'm just like, well, I want us to have a good time. I want us to have a good conversation. But maybe that's why, I don't push any buttons.
Yeah.
I don't like push any boundaries. I'm like, but then I think that's why I'm also like, well, I'm a safe space. Like, I've had, transgender people, authors here. I've had, gay, lesbians. And I'm like, I don't, honestly, sometimes I don't give a shit unless it like obviously is a part of like your story, and it influence your story and your storyline and the bigger issues that you're trying to have commentary on in your stories.
Yeah.
That's the only reason why I would care. Otherwise, like, it's none of my business. We could talk about your art. We'll talk about your art. Even in my non-bookish world, like, I don't give a shit. And even if like, I don't care. I'll let my kids around you. It's okay. Like, so many people are just so afraid. Like, we'll go off on a bunch of tangents, but like, my personal thing on it is there's such a small population that they're not as big of a problem as everybody makes them out to be. Well, it's just the transgender part of it. And I know like people are very justified in having their concerns about that population, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't know enough about it where I don't feel like I have a space to have a negative opinion about it. It's just like, this is your journey. It has nothing to do with me. I can't relate, but I'm going to talk to you about your artwork, about your writing, about your whatever, about your book. And that's like kind of all it is. And then I'll comment on it like, oh, that's an interesting thing that you guys have to deal with. And then how you put it into writing. Like, gay and lesbian, that's even less of a concern for me. I'm like, I have people who, like, my husband's best friends, 2 of them were gay, stood up at our wedding. And like, it's just like I said, like I had one of my interviews that I did a couple months ago. I was like, oh, how did you find me? He was like, oh, you were listed as like, a gay friendly podcast. And I was like, I almost teared up because I was like, that is so special.
Yes.
Like, I'm glad that you guys kind of like collectively like, oh no, she's cool. Like, this is good. Like, it's fine. Because I understand that like there's kind of that extra layer of something that they need to worry about. And I told him straight up, like, I don't give a shit if you're gay unless it's meaningful to like, your story that you came up with, like, then that's, yeah, we'll talk about it. But otherwise, it's like, I don't care.
Like
Like, I
what you
don't.
do is what you do.
It's like
How
I
you
don't
feel is
not
how you
care,
feel.
but
How
like
you
I don't care.
identify is how you identify.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just, it doesn't bother me.
And
And if it comes to the point where like my kids are confused, I'll deal with it. I'll just be like, you know what? I don't, you know, and there was also a thing I think that could be argued either way. Like if, you know, I don't care if my kids experiment, like when they're older, it's just kind of, it could also be a way for them to be like, you know what? Nope, I definitely know that's not for me. I know that this is for me. I know that that's not for me. Or if they're exposed to transgender people, I could see them as being like, you know what? I know for sure that's not me. I am this gender. I'm the gender I was born with. It's just like, it's like, you know what I mean?
mhm.
And it's hard for me to understand how some people get so angry about it. I can understand the fear for their children, but at the same time, it's like, just talk to your kids. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, but that's just me. That's just my like two cents
And
of it.
it's a
I know I
matter
like
of being
rambled on.
able to talk.
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
like they clam themselves up when it's really a very basic conversation. This is how they feel.
Yeah.
Like
And
there's
it's,
no
yeah. It's
it's
as
basically
simple as like
simple.
for my 7-year old, like, why are you angry?
Mhm.
Why do you feel this way? Why do you think this way? Why is this your favorite toy? Why is this your favorite show? What do you like about this? It's just like opening up that conversation, and then hopefully years go by and they feel you could still have that dialogue
Mhm.
and you've already set it that up. Cuz I'm like I go to therapy once a week, you know, and then my kids, they've asked me like, "Mommy, where are you going?" Like bringing it back to earlier. "Mommy, where are you going?" Like
Mhm.
because I'm not around. And I'm like, you know, I go to a therapist. And they're like, what's that? I'm like, well, I talk to someone about like my thoughts and feelings. Like, you know how sometimes I'm having a hard time. I just go to talk to
It's a
someone
brain
about
doctor.
that. And they're like, oh, yeah,
Sometimes the simplest
brain.
answers is all they need. Like they don't need all the complexities of the world.
No, they don't.
Like they,
And I could call my medication my chill pills. Like, I don't like.
seriously, seriously.
It doesn't need to be that serious. And I hope like at least sometime down the line, if they need that, they're not feeling ashamed about it. It's kind of normal for them.
Mhm.
Or if they know someone who needs that, it's kind of
Yeah.
normal for them. You know, it's just like they're like, oh no, it's no big deal. My mom went to therapy for years. It's like, you know, so that's why those are certain topics. You know, we got into the serious topics, but it's like those certain topics that I don't mind talking about here, like how I comment as safe space, because it's like it's just I don't mind it. I think it's important
It's
to
a
talk
part
about it. I think
of
it's important to just like, you know,
making
there's so many voices out there,
mhm.
and sometimes the hateful voices are what gets remembered.
It's
You
part
know.
of creating an actual realistic fantasy world. Because if not, you're
Mm-hmm.
never going to be able to relate. And when you have so many people outcrying for representation in books, like they want to read people like them, like you can't omit them
Absolutely.
because you're afraid to represent them. You just need to do your
Absolutely.
research and make sure that by doing that, you're not creating more harm or stereotypes.
Yeah, that's what I appreciated about Smut Lovers
Hmm.
was that they provided the education,
Hmm.
like the panels and the
Yep.
workshops. They provided all that so that authors get the realistic, the authentic information to incorporate. Because I heard that when I was there, I didn't know that 50 Shades of Grey was problematic
Oh,
or a
so
misrepresentation of that sub Dom community. I had no idea. I've never read the books, I've never watched the movies. So I might watch the movie. I don't know. I might watch the movies just to like get on the hype, but
they're
I was never familiar
entertaining.
about it. So I had no idea that,
They're entertaining,
you
not
know.
educational. And
Yes.
that's where the problem
Yes.
is. So,
And that's because like so many people who don't even know, they are getting the wrong
correct.
idea. Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I appreciated about Smut Lovers. It wasn't just like about like oh dirty books. It was like no, it was
So,
there for you
yeah.
guys so that you could be responsible in your writing and your
Mhm.
storytelling. I loved that. I love that. I learned a new term with punishment. I learned I learned a new term. I was like, okay. I was like, no, I get that. And like the whole, you know, like the sub dom
Mhm.
relationship. It's like no, like a sub will get praise if they use their safe word because they're doing what they need to be
Correct.
doing. It's not a shame. They're not going to get punished for not handling it. Like, no, good job. Thank you for using that, for letting us know, for being vocal about it. And that's what I was like, that's kind of like what helped me give me insight into like, no, this is like a whole thing. It's a
Mm-hmm.
community. It's supportive, and they were so professional and
Mm-hmm.
mature about it. And I was like, that's great. And like, make jokes aside, running jokes aside, fun times aside, it was, I loved how that whole event was handled, and their whole approach
Yeah.
to it, because I felt like I was just attending, I don't know, fucking medical conference. I felt like it was
In
just
a
so
sense, you were.
informational. Yeah.
In a sense, you
Yes.
were, because there's a
Yes.
lot of medical terminology and know-how and just basic knowledge that you need to know for certain levels
Yes.
of kink. Like, my husband is into rope bondage. He's taught shibari for years. He's also an ER nurse. So when he's teaching, it is very medical, because you need to know pressure points. You
Yeah.
need to realize if a rope is too tight, the signs that you have to look for, because you could do some serious
Mm-hmm.
damage if you tie someone in the wrong place. So it is medical,
Yeah.
like a medical conference. Absolutely.
I know. I love that, because then it's also probably second nature to him
Hmm.
to be like, am I being safe?
His
You know.
his classes all start the same. It's like so robotic. It's funny. But it's like basically like it's a 101. Like,
Yeah.
this
A
is the basic
beginners.
knowledge that you need to do. Like, if you can't, if this little bit of medical knowledge makes you squeamish, this you shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it reminds me. Yeah, exactly. Like, so many like medical professions where it's just like, no, you got to get past this
Mm-hmm.
if this is really what you want. But obviously, if this is making you uncomfortable, then this isn't for you, and that's okay.
Exactly.
Like, that's total. It's okay. Like, there's no shame. There's no shame in being vanilla. There's
No,
no shame in being vanilla
there's
plus
no
some
shame
other
in
kinky
being
shit, but
you
you're
or
not total.
organically the way you are. I mean,
Nope.
you want to experiment? Cool. You don't? Cool.
Yeah.
No one's
You
forcing
know
you.
what you like, and you're
Yep.
done. That you know what you like, but you're not done. Like, that's I love it. But that's what I think I would like took away from the smut lovers is like, I learned a lot, but also I was pleasantly surprised with like how organized and how professional and how
I'm totally gonna tell Nikki all of
welcoming.
this information. She'll love it.
Yes. And I'll be there with my friend next year in
Mm-hmm.
September,
Yep,
I
I'll be there
think
too.
it is again. It's so funny how we were like across from the church conference or the church service. And I remember putting that on like my TikTok and Insta, and everybody loved it. It was so funny. They were saying that it happens every year. It happens like the both
Oh,
groups book the same weekend, the same event every year, like
that's
every weekend,
hysterical.
like the same weekend every year. I'm like, that's hilarious. That's perfect. But then there was also some like when we were like caught up in the elevators and at the hotel people, because there was like a
Yeah, the elevator went out or something.
non-religious. I don't know. I was just like, I just remember being like in an elevator with some of the non-religious AA people. It was like
Mm,
non-domination. It was like Alcoholics Anonymous, but for like people like non-religious.
gotcha.
And so they were like, "No, we love that you guys are here."
I didn't
Because
stay
they
at
see
the
the
hotel.
signs for smut lovers, like
Yeah,
all over, and they loved
yeah.
it. They're like, no, we love, because it's like I remember at a certain point, it's like when we were wearing a certain like the badge tag or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, everybody knew. Like it was like okay, no, we could be singled out
Mm-hmm.
because like, oh, dirty, dirty, dirty.
Proudly,
And
proudly.
yep, I'm like, I'm here for the
Yep,
vibes. I'm here for my emotional support status,
yep,
and I'm here to learn, and I'm here to hustle a little bit of hustling,
yeah.
more for support. Um, okay, D. Williams, Morningstar Motorcycle Club series, the NOLA Chapter, second
Mm-hmm.
generation. If you want to get started and get to know her other stories, where it all began, yep, there you go. There you go. That's Seer and
Mm-hmm.
Nova,
Yep.
right? And then Mayhem is coming out on January 20th, but I highly recommend you check out her work. Her website has like a list of all
The reading
their
order.
crazy,
Yep.
all their crazy lists of
Yep.
titles. Lots to sift through. And as I read it as a standalone and I could follow it and I really enjoyed it still. I love your
Thank you.
characters and I recommend this for people who love spicy times but also love the motorcycle vibe and maybe a dipping into the dark romance genre. I definitely recommend it. Where can people find you online and on social media?
So online, my website, dwilliamsauthor.com. Pretty much the same handle on everything, I think, except for TikTok. I think it's author D Williams.
Perfect. I'll be sure to include the links
Yes.
in the show notes so that people can hopefully find you, you know.
I'm everywhere. If you
If
Google
they
me, it'll come up.
I know. I thank you so much for joining
You're
me today. I
welcome.
had such a good
Yes.
conversation. Thank you for your time. I will either see you in April or I will see you in
Yep.
September. Feel free. Had such a great time chatting with you. So if you want to pick up and chat again, feel
We should
free.
totally
I'd
do
love
this
to
again
meet
once
up.
the cowboy books come out.
And there you go. That was Dee Williams talking about her Morningstar Motorcycle Club series. That latest Mayhem is available now. Check out the show notes where you can find links to purchase the book or find Dee Williams online and on social media. Also, please find Cantina Book Club online and on social media, cantinabookclub.com, and any social media platform that you look to find your next book recommendations or follow any updates. Rate, review, subscribe. If you can, go ahead and hop on over to Amazon and Goodreads and give them reviews and readings of any titles that you enjoy because it does help the authors out so much. And as always, thank you guys so much for listening.